Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first kickoff webinar regarding the cannabis industry for our fall series. My name is Tammy Carnwright, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Detroit Regional Chamber, and a pleasure to welcome all of you. Today's discussion, CannaBusiness, Women Empowerment and Progress, will feature women leaders in Michigan's cannabis industry about how to enter, successfully navigate, and even grow in the industry. I want to remind you all that there is a question box that you can submit questions throughout the discussion. Our moderator will be asking questions for about 30 minutes, but then after that, we'll get to other questions. I promise you we'll try to get to all of them, but we may not get to all of them, and we'll do our best. Before we do proceed with the program, I want to thank Plunkett and Cooney. They have been a continued sponsor of our CannaBusiness webinar series throughout our entire series since it started. So I'm going to introduce you to Kelly Baker, and Kelly is a partner with Plunkett and Cooney, and she's out of the Grand Rapids office. She has expertise in the areas of loan workouts, loan origination, title insurance, and cannabis law, very, very important. And today, Ms. Baker represents a growing list of financial institutions as a member of the firm's banking, bankruptcy, and creditors' rights practice group. She's also a member of Plunkett & Cooney Real Estate and Title Insurance Practice Group and the firm's Cannabis Industry Group. So Kelly, please say hello.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for allowing me to take a couple minutes of your time. I'm sorry that we can't be live and in person and meet in person. But it seems to be this is the way we're going, and we may stay on the future. Plunkett & Cooney has had a cannabis practice group for approximately 5+ years. I've been a member since we started the practice group. Our firm practice group has over a dozen professionals in it, and we're actually able to help cannabis businesses from cradle to grave. We can help with regards to corporate formation, corporate transactions, real estate transactions, including all the zoning issues that are presented with a cannabis business, which are a lot. We can also help with local government regulations, administrative law, appeals, environmental law, labor law, and my specialty in the cannabis area, which is banking. We further have an active lobbyist who is following all of the developments in Lansing. And we are able to really help all of our clients go through the myriad of issues that are involved in considering a cannabis business, working with cannabis related businesses, as well as the banking. When I started in this cannabis business group over 5 years ago, there was hardly any banks that were providing the services to these businesses. And over the last 5 years, I've seen such an evolution of banks that are not maybe publicly admitting that they're servicing cannabis businesses, but they are in fact serving cannabis businesses. So we are able to also connect our clients with banking that are providing those services. And I know I was looking in the questions that we're going to be asked today, and one of the big issues is how do women get the funding for the cannabis businesses? So we can certainly help with that as well. We do know some of the banks that are providing those services. I'm going to be sticking around if anyone has any questions later, but Tammy, I'll let you go ahead and take the floor back. Thank you so much, everyone, and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's program moderator, Jamie Cooper. Jamie's the founder of Sensi Connects and the Director of Industry and Community Development for Sensi Magazine, formerly known as Cannabis Connection. Sensi Connects is a B2B networking and lead referral organization focused on growing the cannabis industry. Currently, Sensi Connects keeps business professionals connected in Michigan, California, Colorado, Nevada, Oklahoma, and New England, and plans to expand its models into many other states over the course of the next few months. So as you can hear by just that brief, I could go on very much longer. The bio of Jamie is so impressive, but I really want to let it get to the program. She certainly has the experience. She's been successful, and she's great at helping to connect people in this industry. So Jamie, I'm going to kick it over to you and thank you for being here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Tammy. I appreciate this. I appreciate you and the Detroit Region Chamber for hosting this event for us and highlighting some of the things happening in the cannabis space. So today I am joined by three wonderful ladies. So we have Amy Brown, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Abco Labs. I've known Amy for several years at this point. We have Vitra Stevens. She is the Chief Executive Officer for First Quality Meds. And then we have Luann Sun, who is the owner of Sun's Provisions. So ladies, thank you so much. Thank each of you for being here with us and being a part of today's conversation. So starting out, I'm going to ask each one of you the same question. I'm going to name off the question and then have each of you answer it. The first question is just tell us a little bit about yourself and what did you do as a career before getting into the cannabis space? First, we will start with you, Amy.
Thank you, Jamie. It's fun participating in this with you. You and I have had a long history together in cannabis, and I've appreciated your friendship and your guidance all along. So this is a second career for me. I spent about 30 years in financial services, doing complex financial planning, went to law school, earned my law degree at exactly the wrong time. So I graduated in 2009. And my dad was a chemist and my boyfriend was a caregiver, and we put our brains together, and with my business and legal background, thought that creating a testing lab would be a good way to offer help to this community.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. Vitra, I would love if you could tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you did as a career before getting into the cannabis industry.
Well, thank you very much, Amy, for having me. It's nice to join these beautiful ladies here. In a nutshell, prior to entering into the cannabis market, my partner and I was contracted through, so my background is in marketing, advertising and marketing, things like that. But we were contracted through Wayne County to help create, find, and generate revenue for the county while simultaneously working through Detroit's people mover and creating revenue for the Detroit people mover as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you, Vitra. And then next, Luann, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you did as a career before getting into the cannabis industry.
Sure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my experience with everybody here. I came to US 30 years ago. I came to Western Michigan University to pursue my mechanical engineering degree. So after I graduate with a Master of Mechanical Engineering degree, I've been to different engineer jobs, automotive, building industries, design, then started my own company as engineering and distribution in 2008. So all my life is about engineering.
Wow. So all three of you came from completely different spaces and now into this industry. Amy, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced working in the cannabis industry compared to your prior career?
So I think one of the biggest challenges is that it's a brand new industry. So there isn't, in working in financial services, that was a very old industry that had a lot of very clearly defined do's and don'ts and rules and regulations. And a lot of it was federal. So it made a little bit more sense and was a little bit easier. And I think that just the fact that it's brand new, the fact that it can change in a heartbeat is, I think, one of the biggest challenges. And just wrapping your brain around the different layers of regulatory work. Historically in financial services, you did have federal and state regulatory agencies, but there was enough similarity. So here it is a little different. Just the lack of an already established foundation.
Can you give us an example of a sudden change that maybe you've seen in the last year that was sprung?
Well, and so on the testing side, so basically our job is to make sure that the product that reaches shelves is safe for consumption. And when we were getting validated for our heavy metals testing, we got everything done. We turned it into the state at 10:45 in the morning. And then at noon, they said, oh, you have to test for nickel and copper now too. So we had to start from scratch again on that. And then, one of the things that I ran into, a testing lab needs very different property than a cultivation facility. And we really had to work with the city on the issue of residential buffer zones because we're not open to the public. We're more like a doctor's office. So we had to do a lot of work on that. And then when that change happened, it was a beautiful thing because it meant the property that I had was good.
That's awesome. So sometimes it's good changes.
Sometimes it's good changes. Yeah.
Right. Vitra, what about you? What kind of challenges have you faced being a provisioning center owner?
So some of the same challenges as Amy said in her piece, having something that was newly designed and opening up a dispensary or provisioning center right out of the gate when it was fresh, very fresh, 4 years ago almost, was very challenging because some of the challenges that maybe Amy sees right now, some of the things that I saw, we've already gotten past those and we're on to new challenges now. So I can go on and on and speak about some of the challenges, but it's because it's a new industry to the state of Michigan and they are tweaking and trying to figure out what's going to work best. And the only thing they had to look at was Colorado and, California. And what they did was try to decide what they didn't want to do. So that didn't mean you knew what to do. It just meant you knew what not to do. So just going through those changes with them, quite difficult, but we're getting through it.
Right. And was it difficult to remove the word dispensary and replaced it with provisioning center? I think that was a learning curve that I had to accomplish.
That it's funny because when you're speaking to the MRA and your vendors, then you say provisioning center, but the customers still say dispensary. So that's why I kind of say both of them so that anyone watching can relate.
Absolutely. And then Luann, what about yourself? What kind of challenges have you faced working in this industry compared to engineering?
Yes, the engineering or my career is almost like establish the path. You get your degree, kind of know what you're doing, then you work for a company, been working there for 80 years, 60 years. So there's path, you just follow the path. For cannabis, I took the most difficult license, which is micro business. So on top of that, there's nobody holding your hand, walk with you. You're funding yourself, good luck. You have some basic knowledge or some knowledge from learning from other people, from the book, from YouTube's, from maybe MRE these rules, but mostly you're funding out yourself. So we paid a lot and learned a lot over the course. So this different, it's just, there's no ABCD to follow right there. It's a lot of things you had to learn and find out yourself.
Yes, I have to say you learn how to feel comfortable flying by the seat of your pants. So,
yes, actually, yes.
Right. So next I wanted to ask, what kind of challenges have you faced just being a woman in the cannabis industry? Amy, we'll start with you.
So it was funny because I really had no preconceptions of this industry coming into it. And my prior industry was very male dominated. And I don't think I had any expectation of what this industry would be like. So I was a little surprised at the male domination or, the predominantly male. However, I've also found that people are very open and very, they engage a lot when they find out that you're, a female entrepreneur in a new industry, that people really, they're curious and they want to have conversations and they engage a lot. So I've found the culture to be very welcoming and very accepting. And of course, there are moments, and I think probably more on the cultivation side where there's some prejudgments that women aren't as good, but on the lab side, I've not run into that.
Awesome. And I was looking at some statistics from the Marijuana Business Daily and around women in cannabis, and actually testing labs have the most amount of women in the cannabis space.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Very true.
Vitra, what about yourself? Have you faced any challenges just being a woman in the industry?
Absolutely. Being coming out in the beginning when it was still being being morphed into what it is even today, fighting in Lansing and popping off about what's not right and how things should be tweaked one way or the other. And you're the only woman in the room. Sometimes you have to speak louder. Sometimes you have to make sure that you have all of your I's dotted and T's crossed, because someone will kind of push you to the side if they don't feel like you belong. So you have to kind of make yourself seen and make yourself heard so that we can, have something that we can look back and say, I'm glad we designed it this way, or I'm glad I had a word to be able to say that that changed the game, from where it was before. So challenging, very challenging, because it's several men in this space. As far as my partner and I, we have the provisioning center, grow facility, and now a processing center as well. So all of those are individual fights. So it can be quite challenging.
Yeah, I've run into that with construction. Obviously there aren't a whole lot of women in construction, and that's a space in this industry that I have felt very, definitely outnumbered, so get that. Luann, what about you? Have you, around the micro licensing, have you run into any challenges with being a woman?
I'm, prior to the cannabis business, I still own my distribution business. It's all, like Amy said, male dominant industry. So I didn't really feel I would be woman, I'm not sensitive. So as of today, I feel wrong. We open the February, we grow, we processing, we sell. I feel people are pretty respectful to me as woman or as owner or as minority. So I didn't feel that barrier to be challenged by just a woman, by so many different things. But I just didn't feel a challenge as a woman at this point.
Yeah. Right. And quite honestly, the numbers show that there are probably about equal amount of women involved in this industry compared to the national average of entrepreneurship and C-level executives and even employment. So next question I had, all three of you had to get community approval in order to start your business. What was that process of getting the approval like, and how has the community responded so far?
I'll take that one. Since we've probably been there the longest, the community, we've gotten more love from the community than anything in this process. That's probably the most rewarding as it relates to just being in here for 4 years now. The community has always poured into, because I'm downriver, has always poured into this industry and wanting to be a part of this industry. And what we've done with the community to give back to the community was hire the people in our areas as well, so that when you came to the provisioning center, you saw people that you went to school with, or people that you can relate to, you worked with prior to coming into the facility. So we've always gotten wonderful reviews from our community and from day one. So I totally appreciate that.
Great. Luann, what about you? Municipalities, not a whole lot of municipalities have opted in to micro licenses. You are one of very few, maybe like 4 or 5 that are even in this state. What was the community approval like for you?
I think I'm pretty lucky for that, because I was looking for properties. I found this property early 2020, last year. That's 2020. The village of Decatur already had ordinance for the cannabis well established the year before, 2019. So they put really clear what street on what can be retail. They put a micro business and retail as one category. So when I decided to purchase the building, it was already zoned in. So overall, when I submit the paperwork for them to sign, I think the village of Decatur very supportive. I didn't feel they gave me a hard time for anything.
That's great. I mean, because I think it's really difficult for micro licenses, and that's the biggest hurdle that a lot of micro licenses face is the community approval. Amy, you had to get approval through Warren, who's
Yes.
all over the news in regards to not allowing for a while, and just the infighting that was happening. Tell us a little bit about the process, what it was like for you.
Yeah, it was definitely drinking from the fire hose, because I knew nothing of the city approval processes or how any of this worked. So it involved a lot of city council meetings. I made up several different iterations of flyers talking about what a lab is, how it works, what our role is in the industry. I think that was frankly one of the biggest challenges for Warren, was a lack of understanding of the different license types and the different needs that they would have. Open invitations to any council member to come out and tour the lab anytime. We've had a few take us up on that. It really was a lot of education, and unfortunately there were issues with how the ordinance was written specifically for provisioning centers, and it kind of dragged us all down with it. So adult use rolled out in Warren, I think 13 to 14 months after they had anticipated. And as a business owner, you make this investment, you take this risk. And you know, at the time that I started this, adult use had not passed yet in Michigan. So you're making these business decisions. Then when that passed and you realize, okay, I have this medical license that could be worthless if everybody switches to adult use, and I don't know where my city is going to fall in the process. So it was just a lot of communication, a lot of council meetings, a lot of reading, a lot of trying to understand what they go through, and then just being open and saying, come on out, see what we do, and you know, see what kind of facilities, what they look like.
Right. All right, now I'm going to ask each of you individual questions at this point. So Vicha, we'll start with you. You opened the first adult use cannabis dispensary or provisioning center in Wayne County. The challenge with being the first at anything is that learning curve. You had to kind of create that path for others. What was it like to be the first? And is there anything that you would do differently next time?
It was very rewarding because of what he done prior to that. And I don't think anyone realized, and these ladies understand now the struggle, but I don't think anyone realized what we had to go through prior to opening those doors. And it was quite challenging because just like we said before, this, you know, the MRA was trying to figure it out. And through trying to figure it out, there was some bumps and bruises, and we were right in the middle of that. So it was rewarding to be able to pull through and do that. It's rewarding to be able to say as a woman, you know, it's a great thing to say I'm the first to, you know, to do this on the recreational side. That's wonderful. But what comes after that? Like, you know, how are you setting the tone? How are you making sure that everything else is smooth for anyone else coming after? So when you take that crown, you still have to keep working hard and keep moving fast and say, okay, let's make it easier for someone else. And that part of it can be challenging because people are always watching and seeing what you're up to. And you have to continuously be up to something if you're interested in making sure that cannabis goes where you want it to go.
Absolutely. And how many stores are maybe in a 2-mile radius from you now?
Oh my goodness, we've got several. We probably have about 7 of them in our area, and we're First Quality Meds, and we do well because we put our customers first. And because we were there first, and because, you know, we were able to bring those customers in, and they were able to say, I understand that you open up a dispensary or provisioning center and there aren't any grow facilities, which means you don't have product. I understand that you're still working with the caregiver program and you have to, you know, go through that process. I understand, and we're going to work with you. So they were there through our challenges in the beginning. And, you know, so those customers respected that. So they hung around and they're still holding on to us. So we appreciate that as well.
That's great. Awesome. Amy, I want to talk a little bit about testing. What are the testing requirements? What are you testing for here in Michigan? How does it compare to maybe other states like Colorado or Oregon?
So Michigan is actually one of the more stringent of the states on testing. And just, I'll use flower as an example. So for flower, the testing required is for pesticides, heavy metals, potency, which is all the different cannabinoids. And there are 6 that the state requires, but typically you test for more. Then there's terpenes and microbial contamination, which is a really big deal. So that's going to be yeasts and molds. It's going to be coliforms, aspergillus, E. coli, salmonella, that type of thing. In addition, we also do virus testing. So for people who get their inventory through, you know, if they were to take in clones, for example, we can test those clones. There's been some, you know, viral infections popping up. So yeah, it's a pretty broad spectrum. We also do water activity. Moisture content's no longer required, but just to make sure that what's going on the shelves is safe. If it's a concentrated product that was done using solvents, we do test for residual solvents. If it was not done with solvents, then we do the microbial testing on that as well.
Okay, and what percentage of maybe failure do you see?
Well, so it's never really a hard percentage on failure. And typically the facilities have a harder time with their first couple harvests while they're getting everything dialed in. The biggest failures that we see are total yeast and mold, and the summer was hot and damp. So it was pretty common. There's a little bit more flexibility for adult use on total yeast and mold. You can have a little bit more in it than the medical for patients. But, you know, the vast majority of product passes. And one other test I forgot to mention is foreign matter. So we actually look for if there's evidence of powdery mildew, if there's evidence of bugs or anything like that.
Okay. And they even test for saliva, just in case just in case you're wondering. We learned that about a year ago. So Luann, take a moment to talk to our audience, explain what a micro license is and how it compares to maybe a traditional cultivation, processing, or retail license.
Sure. So I summarize as 3 key points. The number 1 for the micro business, I call that all-in-one. So you have traditionally you have a grower, commercial grower license, commercial processing license, edibles. Then you have dispensary or provision sales, retail. In the micro business, you combine all 3 into one entity. I have only 1 license. The second one I call it is the first all-in-one. The second is all within it. You cannot sell your growth product to any other dispensaries or retail. You cannot buy any THC product from any growers, processors. So everything you sell has to be from your own licensed department. So this is the 2 key difference. The third one is, with all being said, you still have to follow exact same compliance, same rule as other traditional growers, traditional processors, traditional dispensaries. There's no exemption. So that's the 3 I would call key points.
And earlier you said this is the hardest license to obtain, and I agree with that. What do you think the state could do to help alleviate some? I know they've made some changes, but what else could they do to help alleviate some of the pressure that you face as a micro license? And do you feel like they have been responsive to issues that you have faced already?
I had requested, I feel it's a rule. So it's hard for individual from MRA just jump into, open the rule a little bit. For example, one of the challenges we have is we only have the MRA only allowed 150 plants at any given time. So we did rotate, we have different flower rooms. But if one flower room failed the test, which we did before, it's like yeast and mold, no reason, it's no significant reason we fail. Then you just have nothing to sell. You have nothing. Luckily, we have something from the previous harvest, but we have a couple weeks, just one strain, just 1 pound left before next one. So this is a huge pressure. We did make, so we have 3 crops fail back to back for yeast and mold. That was in the middle of summer. I was so desperate. So somebody, my commercial friend told me, go to remediation. So I request, they say there's a remediation, at least, it cost you, but at least you have something on your shelf. So I request MRA allow me to remediate. They did. And we have transportation, sent to the processor. When it's asked to send back, MRA was silent. I said, what's wrong? Why can't I get my product back? It passed the test. Then the MRA officials say, oh, we made a mistake. It's not supposed to allow you to remediate, but because we made a mistake, so we let this one go through one time, we can call back. But in the future, we're going to discuss to see we allow you to remediate or not. So that time I opened my conversation with the official. I said, grow is one of the 3 functions in the micro business. We should treat us the same as other commercial growers. If they are allowed, they have 1,500 to 2,000. If they are allowed to remediate, we only have 150. Can you allow us to do that? They say, yeah, we're going to discuss. So as of today, luckily, Amy, we passed the test 2-3 times. Otherwise, we just don't know what to do. That's a big pressure. If we don't have any flower to sell, we just close the door.
Whew, that's a huge pressure. And, thank you for creating that path. And it's great that MRA is willing to kind of work with you. I mean, it's a learning lesson for them as it is for you.
Sure, yes.
All right. So Vitra, do you feel like Michigan or even the communities of Michigan have put enough focus toward creating a program that is inclusive to the Black and Brown community? And do you feel there could be more done to kind of help improve social equity as we move forward?
So have they done enough? The answer to that is no. However, just like this industry started, it morphed into where we are today. And I'm expecting that to be the same thing for the social equity program. You have to know, what the problem is first before you can kind of embrace that. So I'm seeing that they are working towards that. I'm seeing that they are creating programs and putting people together so that can happen. So it's not enough just yet, because there's still some problems here and there, but they're recognizing some of those issues and they are coming together to be able to rectify those issues. So I am seeing that it is headed in the right direction, and I'm hoping that that I can see where it can be very helpful for Black and Brown people to be able to come into this space easily, which is not a thing in this industry, but to be able to come into this space and be a part of it, because there's so many different levels of being a part of this industry. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. I think people feel like I just need $1 million to have a commercial license and I don't have the revenue to do that. And I think there needs to be more information to let people know you can be a CPA, you can be a marketing specialist, you can be you can take your industry and tweak it into, this cannabis industry and grow your personal business as an entrepreneur. And, I think they just need to know what this space looks like. And I just think the state, once they get more involved into it, create more programs, it will be okay.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up with one final question. What advice would each of you give a woman interested in working in the cannabis industry? Amy, you can go first.
My biggest advice would be to be patient for a minute, attend a lot of different events, talk to a lot of different people, and even the virtual events. The virtual networking is great, and just learn a lot about the industry, because I think one of the points that the three of us are kind of making is the licensed side has its own set of challenges. And to Vitra's point, you could be a CPA, you could be a real estate agent, there's insurance agents, banking. There's a lot of other areas of this business to get into. And the people that I've seen that have really thrived are the ones that had patience. And I think that is key, and learn as much as you can about the industry, meet as many people as you can. And that way you'll have a better foundation to build on.
It takes a village, right?
It absolutely takes
it really does. I think we can all agree that. And that's the great thing about women. We all love to work together, and it really, it's helped. It's really helped to have a network of women and be able to help them and go to them when I need help as well. Vitra, what about you? What advice would you give to a woman looking to get involved in the space?
I'll piggyback off of Amy with that patience, but I would say you need to have the passion. You need to have passion in this industry. Don't follow the dollar. Don't feel like this is a lucrative industry, so I want to be a part of it, because you will change and turn around and walk right out that door. If you don't have the passion to be a part of this industry, then nothing will ever work. So the patience will definitely be a part of it. And if you're an entrepreneur, you'll understand that that's what comes along with that. So if you're passionate in this, and for myself, I was passionate in this because I entered into this for health reasons, and I'm interested into a lot of herbs and things like that. So this kind of, played a part in this. So have some type of passion and love for the cannabis industry, and the patience will come with that.
Absolutely. Luann, what kind of advice would you give another woman?
I agree with both Vitra and Amy's about networking. That's so important to me. I attend this licensing boot camp. I remember that with you being an organizer early 2018, that helped me so much. Almost the starting point for me to start the business. So my second advice or comment is, this is a business. It's not really that lucrative. It is not easy. There's special taxation law. So I think just have really prepare well with the business in mind to have a business plan. So, because in the end, you are going to make money. So it's just my another good advice.
Right. We're going to keep going with questions, and I want to encourage our audience to submit questions. If you have a question that you want to ask any of these panel members, we'd be happy to get some answers for you. Just type it in the chat there, and we'll keep a look at it, or use the Q&A button. Next question I have for all of you is, the lack of access to capital remains a key challenge for women looking to start a plant-touching business, regardless of the market. The amount of money needed to start a plant-touching cannabis business can easily surpass 6 figures. And the networks of investors that can provide that amount of money, such as a high net worth individual or venture capital firms, can be hard for women to tap into. If they do find an investor, the women-owned business often receives less funding and fewer resources, such as mentorship and strategic guidance, than their male counterparts. What do you think we can do as women to kind of help change this, especially in the cannabis landscape? Amy?
Yeah, I do think that's a huge challenge. And I think I've seen more women getting into the funding side of the business, which I think is a big help. The challenge is kind of just going back to the underlying theme about this being a brand new industry. A lot of the places that do lending, they want to see 2 years of your financial history. Well, it's a brand new industry. I don't have 2 years of financial history. So, you know, for myself personally, I had what I had built myself in my savings and some friends and family that helped out. But it is really difficult. And I like to see more women getting into it. Interestingly, I reached out to my former world with a lot of high net worth investors and didn't get a lot of traction. And then later found out that, you know, they were putting a lot of money into grows and realized what it was is that the lab side wasn't sexy to them. It was provisioning centers and cultivation is what everybody wanted to get into. So it is interesting.
Yes, it is. Vitra.
So I just feel like, oh my goodness, this question can be interesting. It depends on what level you want to be a part of this. I think things like this platform will be helpful for women. Having something like this where they can see women, you know, at different aspects and see how they've entered into this business and do they want to be a part of this business. And that's the knowledge that these ladies were talking about prior to understanding. But before jumping into anything, you have to do your research and know if this is something for you before you even tap into this. So thinking that you're going to get into it on the commercial level, you're going to probably need to pool resources to be able to do that because it's still not federally regulated. So you can't say, hey, I have a piece of property and I'd like to get a loan, because the bank will not do that as soon as you say the word cannabis. So those resources, just like Amy was saying, you need to you know, speak to your other counterparts and see who else wants to be a part of the industry, and pull those funds together to be able to do those things, or maybe start off with a smaller license until you can bring in the right funding to be able to grow into a larger commercial license. I think that's the thing that's going to be helpful. But first and foremost, you've got to read and do your research and see if this is something that is for you.
Absolutely. Luann, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think to be creative, to find that source. For example, I did save my money to do the build out, which is, you know, it's huge amount of money. So I wouldn't want to use that money to purchase the building. So I reached out to my classmate when we're little. She just agreed. I convinced her to be partner to buy the building. Then I convinced another friend to be building. Then we have very good lease. So me being a tenant or pay them, me included, with 3 of us purchase building. So we didn't have to go to another level, no high interest. People just help. So sometimes just open mouth to ask people, what do you want?
Right. Okay, while we're on this topic, let's talk about partnerships. Like, are all 3 of you in any sort of partnerships, first of all? And what is the biggest piece of advice that you could give around partnerships and finding the right partners for your business? Amy.
Yeah, I was very resistant to taking on partners in the beginning. It was very important to me to be the first, what I call startup testing lab. There were other testing labs that existed under the prior law, but it was very important to me to be the first one that was just solely MMFLA at the time. So I had avoided taking on partners. And once the business started operating, my plate got really full really fast. And the problem that you face, I think, and probably many of us who are entrepreneurs do, is that none of the stuff on my plate is a full-time job in and of itself. So hiring somebody to do those things wasn't super easy, and bringing in consultants is fine, but then sometimes it's a full-time job just to make sure they're doing what they're, being hired to do. So I was fortunate enough to be introduced to a group who was looking to start a cannabis lab in Michigan. They had been running a hemp lab for years. And we really clicked, and there was a great synergy. Their lab director brought a very deep bench of experience. The CEO can take a lot of the things off my plate. So it's been a really nice strategic relationship. So I'm glad that I took that step later on. I don't regret not doing it sooner because I do think I landed in the right place, but it is a challenge.
Vitra.
Yes, I have a partner. And I would say make sure that if you do bring on a partner, it is someone that you know and trust, and that can really help take on some of that weight off of your shoulders. This is something that you wouldn't imagine as far as the workload that is involved with us having 3 commercial licenses, meaning, a Class C grow, a commercial processing center, provisioning center. That's a lot of work that's involved in, starting that and getting that off the ground. And for that to be on one person's shoulders is heavy. It is very heavy. Just to be on 2 shoulders is very heavy. I would advise not to do too many partners because that can be a headache in itself. And there's a lot of personalities that, that comes along with having several partnerships, unless you're going to bring upon silent partners that are just going to put in the money so that you can move forward if you have the dream. But if you have someone that that can pull the weight, that you trust, that you can turn your back and say, you handle this, I'll handle that, then I would say that's, that will be extremely helpful. But be careful and make sure that you have your paperwork in place so that you're protected as well.
Luann.
I'm 100%. I'm 100% owner, so I don't really have a experience with partners.
Lucky you. No.
I wish
Sometimes it's lucky.
Small business, yeah.
Yeah. No, sometimes I have to say, if you find the right fit, then that's a great thing. My advice is like Vitra said, is to do your research and know who you are partnering up with, because a business partnership is a lot like a marriage. And so, and it's meant to be long lasting. And it's always good to know who your partner is. We have a question in the chat from Brandy. Brandy is asking, what programs, if any, are there for funding to help for minority women? My recommendations, a network that I would suggest looking into is ArcView. I do believe that they do have some programs around that. And then also there is a woman, her name is Khadija Adams, and she does a lot of work in Michigan. I've known her for several years. She is a great resource in terms of funding for minorities. So feel free to email me. It's jamie.cooper@cincymag.com. And I would love to make an introduction to her because she is a lovely individual to know and can help out. Vitra, do you have any recommendations maybe in the Metro Detroit area?
Well, I know that the MRA has on their website some programs for social equity, and that's usually the best start. But there's several different organizations, and you can feel free to reach out to me. Actually, if you Google Vitra Stevens, VETRA Stevens, STEPHENS, Google Vitra Stevens, and you can find me and all of my social networking things, and I can definitely direct you to all of the young ladies and men that are in that space. Absolutely.
And I am putting my email into the chat. If anyone does want an introduction to either Vitra or Khadija, I would be happy to make that connection. Any other recommendations from either you, Amy, or Luann?
I think Vitra made an excellent point on the passion and just getting involved and meeting people. and connecting. And I think that's, I think that's the biggest thing in this industry.
Right. Now, what do you love most about working in the cannabis industry? Vitra, we'll start with you.
Well, I had a preconceived notion about cannabis prior to getting involved with this. And like I said previously, health reasons is what took my partner and I in this direction. So opening up a provisioning center and meeting the people and seeing that they were not like I expected them to look was just enlightening. It was just enlightening. I expected to see the rapper and the young guy with his pants hanging down and, you know, people with crazy hair. And I just expected something that I did not see. And I saw people from churches and, you know, teachers. I mean, people that indulged in cannabis for various reasons, for pain management, for, you know, mental disorders or accidents that they had been into for different reasons, but just seeing regular people, just like us, regular people that indulged in cannabis was quite enlightening, and I appreciated that. So it made me want to be have something opening up for all to come. So yeah.
Luann, what do you love most about working in this space?
Yeah, earlier 2018, after a seminar, I also went to study the cases of hard drugs. How, you know, there's a program, how the, you know, the people addicted to that, and compared to the herbal marijuana, I feel this is so much healthier alternative for people who have just all kind of needs, maybe relaxation, it could be pain kill, or just anxiety. And we opened the February, I have been in the waiting room, talked to a lot of people. I feel so rewarding with people with a smiling face, tell me how much they enjoy it. It's just so rewarding.
Right.
I think Amy, it's a lot more than how much money bring in at certain points.
Yeah, you are absolutely changing lives. Amy, what about you?
So I think for me, one of the things in financial services is it could be a little bit of a pretentious world. And that's one of the things that I genuinely love about cannabis is there's no expectation, there's no pretension. Come as you are who you are. You're going to have a variety of different people at different events. Sometimes, you know, the smartest person in the room on a topic looks like a stereotypical hippie that you've seen. And it's, to me, I find that fascinating, where I feel like people meet each other on a more genuine level than on, you know, what are you wearing? You know, where did you go on vacation? That kind of thing.
Right. All right. We have time to answer one more question that is in our chat. Vitra, I think you would be a great person to answer this. Do you recommend to rent a space to open a provisioning center? And how much money would you expect for a business owner to need to get started? And how do you anticipate ROI?
Oh, well, so it depends on what level you're speaking of. If it's a provisioning center, if that's what we're speaking of, renting space, I would recommend renting space only if you had some contingencies in your contract that says you have a 5-year lease with a 5-year option, something like that. Something that once you build that business, someone can't come and say, okay, we're going to change this, and now it's going to be something that you need to move out, or you're going to be stuck giving us, you know, half of what your earnings are. So this is going to be protecting you as a business owner, but that's fine to be able to rent the space. Just be prepared to rent it correctly. If it's on the grow facility, same thing. But as far as the revenue that's required, you're going to need quite a bit of capital on a commercial level. You're going to need, I would say, you're going to want to be able to touch at least $500,000 to be able to open up a facility, make sure that you're stocking that facility and ready for the general public or the vendors, depending on which facility you're in. If it's a grow facility, you're going to be north of that. If it's a processing facility, you will be north of the grow facility. So it depends on the space that you're entering into, but it's going to be important for you to make sure that your paperwork is where it needs to be. I would say get an attorney so that you are protected if you were to be a part of that.
Wonderful. Well, that concludes our questions for the day. I want to give a special thank you to Vitra, Luann, and Amy for having this conversation with us. And again, the Detroit Regional Chamber for facilitating this conversation. It's great to have a network and a community that is willing to give us this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Well, Jamie, thank you very much for such a great job moderating. You just held the conversation right straight through, and to all of our panelists. I'm kind of blown away with all of you. You are really cool and you know your stuff. And so we have the right panel to do this. I'd encourage everyone, Jamie did put her email in the chat box, and she can always connect you with Vitra or the others, or our staff can too, that if you would prefer that. I want to let you know that this was recorded. So, you know, if you want to share with folks what you heard today and you want them to hear these dynamic women voices, it'll be on our website probably sometime after tomorrow, because truly we just saw a group of women who are really maneuvering well through the cannabis industry. I do need to say one more thank you to Plunkett Cooney for being our sponsor of this continuing series. And thank you to the person who put a question in the chat box about finding funding, because that just happens to be what our next January event will focus on, how to find your funding. And I'm sure some of these ladies will have other input too around that. But just to let you know, when you pose questions to us, it gives us good ideas of what to do for you in the future. So keep it going. But also, just please remember to check out all of our CannaBusiness resources and program announcements at www.detroitchamber.com/CannaBusiness. So again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Plunkett Cooney. Thank you to our amazing moderator, Jamie, and to this panel of expert women who had so much to share. So with that, I wish you all a great rest of the day and see you at some of our future events.